Okay, so this time we're going to use the Prusa Slicer to set up our prints. And here basically we will create a G code and we just use the 3D printer OS to transfer that G code to the printers. The slicer in 3D printer OS system is a cloud slicer, whereas the Prusa Slicer is a locally installed program. Personally, I find the Prusa Slicer to be better. It's more capable. There's more options in there compared to the 3D printer OS slicer. The reason I think it's better is because it's developed by Prusa and we are using Prusa printers and along with their Prusa filament, and so everything is optimized to work well together. The slicer in 3D printer OS is, I think, trying to be all things to all men and just does not have the same detailed capabilities if you want to do more advanced 3D printing. The Prusa slicer is on the computers in the computer room, and but you can also download it to your own laptop or PC. So you just need to Google Prusa slicer, and you will get the latest version. And there is an option. There's options for a Windows version and a Mac version. So as soon as you download it, and when you open the software, this is the view you will get. It is the same on the computer rooms, the version that's on the in the mechanical engineering computer rooms. So the first thing you need to do is you need to set up the correct printer, okay, and material, because the output G code is dependent on what printer you're going to use to print your part with. So to do that, if you just go to the top here to configuration, normally this configuration wizard will appear if you're installing the software, but you can go back to this configuration at any stage by just selecting the menu option there. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to set up our printer. So if you can just go to the Prusa option here, and the printers that we have are the MK4s. So there's two options here. There's the original version, and the nozzle size is 0.4. That's a given, that's on the machines. But there's also a fast print version here. It's called an input shaper. Um, the I suppose one thing to watch out for is the quality from the input shaper may not be as good as the normal speed printer. So, but you do have the option to try them out. Just on the remaining, these are all just older Prusa printers, so we only need to pick the top two here. The next thing you can do is you can jump down to filaments and just make sure that Prusa PLA is checked here. The checkbox is ticked because that's the material that we're printing with. So then you can just go to finish, and when it goes back to our view here, you will see that the bed has changed and it looks now it's been identified as an MK4, which is correct. And in this drop down here we have the two options. We have the normal speed and we have the faster input shaper machine. So I'm going to select the normal speed machine. As for the materials, it has defaulted to Prusa PLA, which is correct for us, but there are other options there, but just make sure that you pick Prusa PLA. Okay. Um, the other setting, if you download it to your own laptop, um, the newer software has an option to output the G code as a binary G code type. So unfortunately, our 3D printer OS system does not take in that type of code. So you have to go back to configuration, go to preferences, other, and just remove this checkbox here. And that means that the output from the software here will be in standard G code. Um, we also have here on the top right hand side, um, we have a few different menu options. So if you pick expert, which just opens up all the menus available to us. So now that we have the software set up correctly, we can bring in our STL file for to set up the print. Okay, so to do that, you can just go to this icon here, so add file, and I'm just going back to my trusty T shape. So this is our STL file, and select open, and the part lands directly onto the build plate. If you need to orientate it, and there's a quick way to do that here. If you select this option here on the left hand side, place on face. So select that, and if I click a face, and it'll quickly rotate. Okay, so and again, click in the part and click on face, and I can move things around. Okay, quite easily. So so to set up the print, if we look over here on the right hand side, just working from the top down, the first thing is the layer height. So you can see there's a couple of different ranges there, and normally I pick 0.2, which gives a good enough print quality. Um, Again, the Prusa PLA, we have that already set, so that's good. And making sure that it is the MK4 machine. If we needed support, so if we're going to print in this orientation, we don't need any support, so I'm not going to check that. The next option then would be infill. So again, 20% is quite adequate. Whether or not you need a brim, usually you would apply a brim to smaller parts that have a small contact surface. On a part as big as this, you may not need a brim, but sometimes you will find that the larger parts tend to warp, and it's to do with the cooling rates. So it can be a good idea to put a brim on. So I'm just selecting that box there. Okay, so now if I go to the bottom and I go slice now, and the information then that's given down here is the filament used is 63 grams, and the print time would take 3 hours and 5 minutes. Okay, so again, just to demonstrate, if we were to make that 100% infill, just accept that default there, and if I slice it, the print time is going to increase substantially, so just bear that in mind when you're um, using different infills. I can use this slider here, and I can run down through so I can see what the build would look like. So you can see there that internally the structure looks like it's solid, whereas if I select that back to 20% and slice again, and now we're back to the 3 hour 12 minutes print time, and I can see that you have that representation of the internal structure. Okay, so when we're happy with the setup of the print, if it's a case you wanted to add another shape, you just go back and select another part. So now we export the G code, and I can save that. Okay, so that's done. So the next thing I do is I go to my 3D printer OS, and we add file and select the file that we've just created, so the G code. So you can see there's a little bit of information in the file name. It's a 0.4 nozzle. The layer height is 0.2. We're using PLA. The printer is an MK4, and it's going to take 3 hours and 12 minutes, and the file type is G code. So we open that, and the 3D printer OS system here asks me to save it as an MK4 G code. There are other options there, but just make sure that we're using the default MK4 and select save. So now what I can do is I can just go to print, and I select the printer in the normal fashion. So that's our first print from Prusa Slicer and the setup. So thank you.